Ancient Egypt's darkest secrets exposed chilling messages hidden in King Tut's tomb. Unlike many other tombs in ancient Egypt, King Tutankhamun's tomb remained hidden and untouched by looters for over 3,000 years. One reason was its small size. It was smaller than average, and it was tucked away in a place called the Valley of the Kings. By the time they finally found Tut's resting place, the area had already been heavily explored. The entrance to the tomb was completely covered by debris from a nearby tomb's construction, which probably helped keep it hidden. There were also no signs or inscriptions on the outside to hint that it was there. Time itself played a role in preserving the tomb in amazing condition, until the 1920s, when a man named Howard Carter finally uncovered it. But was Carter really the hero history paints him as? Some recent findings suggest he might have been a bit more cunning than people originally thought. Carter wasn't just a glory-seeking treasure hunter. He was a real archaeologist, and his obsession with Egyptian artifacts started when he was a child. He even began sketching ancient carvings and hieroglyphs from old tombs. After discovering King Tutankhamun's remains, Carter spent a decade documenting and handling thousands of items, golden thrones, chariots, statues, from the tomb, and shipping them down the Nile to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. Well, that was the official story. New discoveries suggest that not all of the treasures made it to Egyptian authorities. It seems Carter followed a secret policy of one for them, one for me. A private letter sent in 1922 to Carter's friend, the linguist Sir Alan Gardner, hinted at this. In another letter from 1934, Carter asked Gardner for advice and sent him an amulet as a gift. Carter claimed the amulet wasn't from King Tut's tomb, but clearly it was. Even the British director of the Egyptian Museum knew something fishy was going on, but he couldn't prove it. When comparing Gardner's amulet with others from Tut's tomb, they were a perfect match. Gardner was so upset about being put in such a compromising position that he vented to Carter in another letter. But instead of exposing him, Gardner chose to stay loyal and advised Carter to return the stolen goods to Cairo. Oh, and by the way, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Brightside for more amazing stories from history. But this wasn't the only shady thing Carter may have done. In 1947, a man named Alfred Lucas, who had worked with Carter, published some strange information in a mysterious Cairo journal. He claimed Carter had secretly broken into the burial chamber and then resealed it to make it look untouched. Why would he do that? The theory goes that Carter and his team might have entered the tomb early to get their hands on some valuable artifacts. Obviously, they couldn't risk selling these items while they were still alive, but they made sure they'd go up for auction later, after they had passed through Carter's hands. Although he never officially confessed or denied anything, the Egyptian government didn't want to risk more missing treasures, so they banned him from the tomb for a while. Some have even linked all of this to the famous Curse of the Pharaoh. If you've never heard of it, the idea was that anyone who disturbed the boy king's resting place would suffer terrible luck. It's not exactly like in the movies where a mummy comes back to life, but word spread that several people involved with the excavation died under mysterious or tragic circumstances. The most famous death linked to the curse was George Herbert, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon, who helped fund the excavation. He died just a year after the tomb was opened. People loved to call this mysterious, but in truth, Herbert was already in poor health before arriving in Cairo and died of a fairly common illness. Now let's look at the numbers. Tons of people were involved in the excavation. Archaeologists, security guards, support staff, and yes, a few of them did die shortly afterward. But statistically, that's not shocking. If you gather a large group of people and wait long enough, a few deaths are bound to happen by chance. In fact, most of the people supposedly cursed lived more than 20 years after the tomb was opened. Even Herbert's daughter lived into her 80s. Howard Carter himself lived until 1939, 16 years after the big discovery. So, some believe the whole curse was actually just a clever PR move. Carter probably made it up to scare off nosy reporters and keep them away from the tomb. So, what was stolen from King Tut's tomb? Well, for starters, some jewellery, possibly stolen by Carter himself. A French specialist did some deep research using old photographs taken in the 1920s and compared them with items in museums and auction houses. He began to piece together where some of Tut's missing jewellery went. First, there was a collar that had been on Tut's chest. It was broken into pieces, some of which ended up in the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art in Missouri. Other parts turned up in a necklace owned by some private collectors who tried to sell it in 2015, but failed. The museum has since confirmed this on its website. Another necklace made from beads, believed to be from Tut's headdress, also appears to have been taken by Carter. It's now held by the St. Louis Art Museum. One more beautiful ceramic inlay collar even spent some time in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. Thankfully, that one was returned to Egypt over a decade ago. And yes, it too was likely taken by Carter. Despite all the missing artifacts, King Tutankhamun's tomb still gave the world some amazing insights into ancient Egyptian culture. Just look at his iconic golden death mask, 21 inches of solid gold with inlays of semi-precious stones and coloured glass, weighing 22 pounds. It shows the young pharaoh with a long beard, wearing a headdress decorated with a cobra and a vulture. There's even a spell from an ancient Egyptian spiritual book included to help him succeed in the afterlife. Archaeologists also found 4 board games in the tomb, some made of ivory, and a pair of golden sandals, probably never worn in life, just for show. Turns out, Tut was quite the stylish ruler too. His tomb even contained a mannequin used to store and display his clothes and jewellery. And he probably loved music. 2 trumpets were found in his tomb and even played once during a BBC broadcast in 1935. They're now far too fragile to use. For over 3,000 years, Tut's golden mask stayed hidden in the Valley of the Kings. The artifact, standing 21 inches tall, is a stunning example of the artistry of ancient Egyptian goldsmiths. But no one expected that X-rays taken decades later would reveal one of the tomb's biggest secrets. Tutankhamun was the last ruler of his family line in Egypt's 18th dynasty. He took the throne at just 9 years old and only ruled for 10 years before dying unexpectedly. Honestly, later rulers didn't care much about him. His tomb wasn't a big deal to them, even grave robbers ignored it. Sad? Maybe. But that forgetfulness was a blessing in disguise. His tomb remained sealed and untouched, unlike most others in the Valley of the Kings. So when it was finally discovered in 1922, it contained over 5,000 treasures and made King Tut one of the most famous pharaohs of all time. The most breathtaking piece? His golden mask, meant to be a perfect likeness of the boy king so that his spirit could recognize his body in the afterlife. The mask's detail seemed almost impossible to craft, and people didn't realize just how complex it was until years later. In 1967, it was X-rayed before being sent to an exhibition in Paris, the first time it had ever left Egypt. These scans were for preservation purposes, but also revealed secrets of how the mask was made. The real surprise came in 2007, with new, clearer scans that showed the mask wasn't made from pure gold. So, how did the Egyptians pull off something so intricate without modern welding tools? That's a whole other mystery. Even though it looked like it was made from pure 24-carat gold, King Tut's mask was actually made from 23-carat gold. That means it was mixed with another material. A specialist discovered that the gold sheets used in the mask had a bit of copper in them, a reddish-brown metal likely added to make the gold easier to shape and more flexible. To create the mask, ancient craftsmen would heat and hammer the gold sheets repeatedly. But there was another surprise hiding in the mask that wasn't discovered until 2015, just a year before museum staff in Cairo were preparing the mask for display. During handling, the long beard on the mask accidentally fell off. Some people think the beard had just loosened over time and finally dropped. Either way, the fact that King Tutankhamun's beard fell off caused a major stir. After all, this was one of Cairo's biggest tourist attractions. Experts had to fix it fast. The restoration started with a detailed recording of the mask's condition, including a full 3D scan. And by chance, they discovered something fascinating. Inside the beard was a small golden tube, probably used by the Egyptians to attach the beard to the mask. This finding proved again just how complex the mask's construction really was, but the mysteries didn't stop there. Remember how it was long believed that the mask represented Tutankhamun's real face? Well, maybe not. Some popular theories suggest the mask was never made for him in the first place. It may have actually been designed for someone else. A 2015 study proposed that the mask was originally created for a female pharaoh, possibly Nefertiti, his stepmother. The biggest clue came from an inscription on the mask. At first glance, it looked like it bore King Tut's name, but researchers noticed that something else had been written underneath. It looked like the original name was replaced, and what had been there before translated to Queen Nefertiti. There's another detail about the mask that had been ignored for years: the pierced ears. Some researchers believe that by the time Tut was 18, he no longer wore earrings, so he shouldn't have been shown with pierced ears. This could further support the theory that the mask was made for someone else, maybe Nefertiti or another royal. And it's not just the mask that raises questions. His whole tomb is full of mysteries. Recently, historians found signs that the spot where King Tut was buried may have been changed at the last minute. For years, experts have wondered why a pharaoh who ruled for 9 years ended up in such a modest tomb. Compared to the grand tombs of other pharaohs, Tut's final resting place seemed oddly simple. It didn't match the power and significance a king of Egypt was supposed to have. So, what happened? Well, it might have something to do with his successor, the pharaoh who took over after Tut's death. Some researchers believe this successor wanted Tut erased from Egyptian history. One theory suggests that's why Tut was buried so quickly in a smaller, less impressive tomb. When experts looked at the tomb of A, his successor, they found something intriguing. A large wall painted with images of baboons, the same style of artwork found in Tut's tomb. It seemed the same person designed the art in both places. In fact, the design and decoration of both tombs are nearly identical, which points to a common artist or planner. But there's one big difference. A's tomb was way bigger and more impressive. Even though the style matched, A's tomb looked like it was built for a proper king. So, the theory goes, When Tutankhamun died suddenly at 18, his grand tomb wasn't ready yet. Normally, pharaohs start building their tombs early in life, but Tut didn't have that luxury. I may have taken advantage of the situation, rushing Tut into a smaller tomb while keeping the big one for himself. That would also explain how I was able to erase Tut from history so easily. Still, the story of King Tut's mask and tomb is packed with mystery and wonder. Every new discovery sheds more light on what really happened all those years ago. One thing's for sure, ancient Egypt still has a lot left to reveal, and Tutankhamun will keep fascinating people for generations to come. Before we get into how and why pyramids exist all over the world, let's check out some jaw-dropping examples. Let's start with the Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico. These people really knew how to build a city. Their urban centre stretched over 7 square miles and was full of pyramids. But the Pyramid of the Sun is by far the most impressive. Built around 100 AD, it's one of the largest structures of its kind in the entire Western Hemisphere. It rises 216 feet above the ground. You literally can't miss it if you're anywhere near that ancient city. To build it, workers used about 1 million cubic yards of materials, including a special red volcanic rock called tepetate. Pretty impressive, right? We still don't know much about the people who built it or what it was for. But archaeologists believe there was a temple at the top. In the 1970s, explorers found tunnels and chambers underneath it, and in 2011, a hidden stash of pottery, obsidian, animal bones, statues, and even a mask was discovered. Who knows what else is buried in there? If you ever visit, you'll have to climb the 248 uneven steps on the western side. Watch your step. Now let's head to Sudan, where you'll find over 200 Nubian pyramids. They're not as big as the ones in Egypt, but they're just as fascinating. These pyramids were built for the rulers of the Kingdom of Meroe, who ruled from Nubia all the way to the Mediterranean for nearly 1,000 years. They were made of granite and reddish sandstone, and get this, Sudan has more ancient pyramids than Egypt. These pyramids reflect the original architecture and burial customs of the Nubian kingdoms of Napata and Meroe, which were deeply influenced by ancient Egypt. One massive pyramid site is the final resting place of more than 40 queens and kings. Inside, the tombs show mummified royals wearing jewellery, and their wooden coffins had bows and arrows. Other artifacts prove there were strong trade ties between Nubia, Egypt, and even Greece. So if you're looking to explore ancient burial sites, you might want to skip the crowds in Egypt and check out Sudan instead. Now let's fly over to Iraq to see a different kind of pyramid. Ziggurats are stepped temple towers with terraced levels instead of smooth sides. They look like tiered cakes and were perfect for important rituals. You'll find these towering structures scattered all across Iraq and Iran, a real testament to the engineering skills of the people who built them. One of the most impressive is the Ziggurat of Ur. It's basically a massive rectangular pyramid, about 70 to 100 feet tall, with 3 levels and a temple on top. Can you guess how many bricks it took to build? Just the base alone used 720,000 baked bricks. This ziggurat was built around 2100 BC by the Sumerian king Ur-Nammu and dedicated to the moon god Nana. It was the tallest building in the city and visible for miles, kind of like a medieval cathedral tower in its time. People came here to trade surplus crops, collect rations, and seek spiritual guidance. Sadly, the temple at the top didn't survive, but we do have some glazed blue bricks, that were likely part of its decoration. The lower levels are still stunning, and the architects even added holes in the brickwork to let moisture escape. Now that we've explored pyramids on Earth, let's zoom out a bit. Pyramids can be found all over the world. Egypt has over 100. Sudan has double that. Dozens more are scattered across the Middle East and China. But the Americas have more pyramids than anywhere else on Earth, especially in Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. It's time we dig deeper into the history of pyramids. The oldest pyramid of all? That would be the Step Pyramid of Djoser, built by the pharaoh who ruled for 45 years. It was created by stacking layers of stone, one on